There has been a catalogue of failures on the part of the Metropolitan Police. There has been a deliberate attempt by News International to thwart investigations, and that there have been continuing arguments between the CPS and the police over the interpretation of the law. They have failed to do what they ought to have done right at the start, which is to put the victims of phone hacking right at the front of their agendas. And it's astonishing to have assessed the evidence that we have been hearing over the last 6 months. It's both a structural failure and it's a failure of individuals. We know that the first investigation ought to have been more thorough. We know that Mr. Yates's establishment of facts, and we understand for the first time he was put under no pressure from Sir Paul Stevenson to complete it in 8 hours, did not establish the facts. And we also know that in terms of the appointment of Mr. Wallace, due diligence was not performed by Mr. Fodaccio, who is the Director of Public Affairs. In evidence given to our committee in the public session, they were each blaming each other for this appointment, and this is not acceptable in Scotland Yard, which is one of the finest police organisations in the world. It should be a model of policing. I'm not surprised, bearing in mind what we have found, that the Commissioner felt that he had to go and that Mr. Yates felt he had to go, but we were very disappointed with the response of the Metropolitan Police. There was something of a revolving door. It was rather like a job placement scheme, where people who worked for the Met then went on to write columns for News International, such as Mr. Heyman, and those who worked for the News International went on to work for the Commissioner. And there was a time when there was an employee of the News of the World working for the Commissioner, an organisation that was investigating these issues, and at the same time working for the then Leader of the Opposition and Prime Minister. So these are very odd circumstances, and maybe individually people may say there was no impropriety, but if you take it all together, as well as Lord MacDonald having been the Director of Public Prosecutions during the first investigation and now advising News International about what their case is at the moment, well, frankly, I think taken as a totality, there seems to have been ex-News of the World employees all over the place. All the police officers in their evidence to us, Mr. Yates in his final comment about people taking responsibility, he meant News International, that they did not want to cooperate. Mr. Clark, the former head of counter-terrorism, who was in charge of the first inquiry, saying that News International was thwarting and not cooperating with the investigation. It's very clear that there was a lack of cooperation, and that is why the first inquiry went into the ground. But we're also concerned about the arguments between the CPS and the police, and that's why we think it's really important that they should stay closely together in the new inquiry so people in the end are prosecuted.